Thank you, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Start off with the land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional lands of Acadia First Nation, part of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Today is Tuesday, May the 14th of 2024. Item number 4, is there any additions or deletions to the agenda as circulated? If not, I'd entertain, Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor.
I'd like to be able to discuss the MPA, marine protection areas that we could ask for a presentation from DFO on that.
For the marine protected areas?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll add that under new business. 9.2, I'll just mark it marine protected areas.
I sent you an email on that, but maybe you never got it.
I probably missed that, Counselor. My apologies for that.
No problem.
Yes, I do remember it now that you mention it. Need a motion to amend the motion to item 9.2. Moved by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton to add that amendment. Is there any more additions or deletions? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you. Is there a way to stop the buzzing on your microphone? I'm not sure. When mine is off and yours is on, I just don't know if it's picking up in the live feed or if it's.
All right, thank you. No, my microphone was buzzing earlier. Councillor Cushing, could you turn your mic off, please?
Oh, sorry.
Is there any more additions to deletions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Nick Hilton, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing to approve the agenda as amended. Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, item number 6, if there's any declarations of conflict of interest, please notify me and I'll make sure that your name is recorded by Jenny, our recording secretary. Item number 7, presentations. Today we have with us the RCMP detached, I was going to say the acting detachment commander, Mark McPherson, and also with him in the background is Corporal Carmen Myers. So you have a presentation for us today. Staff Sergeant Mark, Mr. McPherson, and your microphone is on and you can have the floor.
Thank you, Warden, CAO, councillors, and members of the public. I want to thank you for the time to speak today. As the Warden said, I'm Staff Sergeant Mark McPherson. I'm temporary filling in in the detachment commander role for Yarmouth Rural RCMP. We currently have a staffing complement of 13 uniform officers plus 1 reserve constable providing policing services for the area. And that's for the municipality of Argyle and municipality of Yarmouth. Aside from those 13 what we call general duty members, with support from our reserve constable, we have a number of support sections in Yarmouth Rural, including our police service dog, our forensic ident section, our traffic services section, street crime enforcement unit, and as well as a district advisory NCO, which is a position that's a conduit between local operations and our district policing officer who sits in Numinus. Aside from that, in regards to the additional assets the RCMP provides and can call upon for Yarmouth Rural or any RCMP detachment in the province, we now have a full-time emergency response team, underwater recovery team, or used to be called the dive team, our explosives disposal unit, critical incident command program, which is a dedicated program for anything active, whether it's active threat, such as say an active shooting event, or natural disaster, the Critical Incident Command Program immediately implements a series of procedures where someone takes charge without having to actually get to the scene and deal with it. We have a division liaison team, which is basically a form of a negotiation team, and they're usually engaged during road blockades, the fishery dispute, and they're to take a measured approach to keeping things from becoming violent. The negotiation section would be part of our critical incident program with IRT, where they would negotiate with the subject if there was something significant happening. We also can draw upon our air services, which are stationed out of Moncton, New Brunswick. Our major crime unit, who's stationed out of New Minas, but they're down here quite frequently. They primarily work on homicides or attempted homicide. And as well, what's significant to note, and they've been engaged quite often, are two other sections. One is our collision reconstruction program. They go to any serious injury or fatal motor vehicle accidents, God forbid, and that's why the highway is often shut down for hours while they recreate what happened, and they have a drone, etc., and they provide a report to the investigating officer. And the last section, who have been engaged quite heavily, more so in the Meteghan area, but they're often down throughout this end of the province, is our tactical support group. So that's a large group of officers who conduct searches, provide extra resources for large events, such as, say, a concert or festival where local resources are spread too thin, say, if you have an influx of several thousand people in the area. They're quite often engaged up in Acadia. And that's worked quite well. A quick touch on my report for the fourth quarter with Yarmouth Rural, and that's January, February, March. So basically, our year starts April 1st. So this report is from quarter four, the final quarter of the previous year. Yarmouth Rural Detachment had 607 calls for service, 23 tickets were issued, and 67 warnings. Of the types of calls, we had 120 motor vehicle related calls, and they can be anything from erratic driving complaint, someone speeding, someone following too closely. It's a variety of calls. We had 67 mental health calls where officers attended and dealt with whatever situation that was present. 47 motor vehicle collisions, and thankfully none of them were fatal. There were several serious injury collisions. 23 damage to property calls, 20 break and enters. We had 18 fraud calls, and the frauds, for the most part, I reviewed them all. For the most part, they are folks being victimized by online scams, or buying Bitcoin or investing in Bitcoin, and it's a bogus company. We've had 16 assault calls and an additional 6 assault with weapon calls. And the assault with weapon calls can be anything from a firearm, a blunt instrument, somebody throwing a mug at somebody. So they aren't all really high-end violent calls, but they are significant. And we have 7 impaired driving charges, or persons charged with impaired driving in that 3-month period. Some were self-generated observations by the officer, or car in the ditch, or somebody calls and says, there's a car in front of me driving erratically. So of those calls, the most significant one that comes to my attention is the mental health calls. It's a significant number of mental calls over a period of 90 days. There was 67. And I didn't count in there incidents where we are called to assist EHS. Topics for awareness. I can't go into details, of course. I'm sure everyone understands of specific files because there's people's privacy to be mindful of. New detachment commander for Yarmouth Rural is coming in from Alberta. He'll be here, his first day will be July 15th. We have a few shortages currently that we're managing with external resources to cover the shift. So if a member is off, a RCP member is off, we cover that shift with either somebody on overtime or one of our reserve constables, which we'll bring in. And we've been trying to do that for our reserve constable we have now. He's been here a year. He works the rotation, and we have another one coming in next week. He'll do a month here and then take a couple weeks off, and then he's going to do another 5 weeks from August to September. So, so the policing service, we're trying to ensure that it's not interrupted or affected negatively. And the last thing I'd like to mention, one of our provincially funded positions is the school resource officer. That position is currently vacant because we've placed that officer back on the rotation, back on frontline. That'll most likely remain unstaffed or vacant until September, October sometime. And to speak to that very quickly, the risk is responding to calls for service 24/7, and although it's great to have someone in the schools, you know, getting to know the students and the teachers and any of the support services there, but the greater risk is having enough members to respond to calls for service. And that's really all I have.
Thank you very much, Staff Sergeant. We'll open up the floor to any questions from council members. Oh, I didn't see the deputy warden all of a sudden make his appearance. You got him? It's just like Houdini. There he was. First one on the floor is Councillor Nick Hilton. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for coming in today. We had the pleasure of speaking for an hour prior to this, and it was very informative. And on Thursday, we have you again for the Police Advisory Committee, and you know, you just shed a little bit more light on this, the in-school, the member that's going to serve in school, and that was one of the topics of discussion for Thursday, which I just wanted you to be aware, and I think the information that you've provided has been great that way. And also there's some discussion around the ATV trails, drinking on them, some of the theft of the bollards that were there, that had happened over the years, or sorry, over the spring, and you know, look forward to those conversations. But thank you very much for coming in today, and the information's been great.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I apologize I wasn't able to be here for the previous session. But just a quick question. I know mental health, and you see it in news media, and you hear about it a lot in print and so forth. The mental health side of things, is there extensive training for officers, responders, around that issue? I know it's a very, very broad issue, so I'm asking the question with that in mind. How are the members dealing with it, you think, generally speaking, well, or are there certainly challenges? So I'll leave the question at that. I hope I've articulated it well enough. But
We do have, and thank you for the question, Deputy Warden. We do have significant training, nothing like a clinician or a caseworker would have, of course, but we have significant either in-person or online training. A lot of our training now is virtual or online. I can tell you that every call we go to it's very situational. So when we respond to a call regarding someone who's in crisis, it can be varying levels or degrees of seriousness. Sometimes it's a cooperative, congenial conversation where the person realizes they're having a crisis moment and they want to go for help. And then we would engage our EHS partners to transport them if they wish. Sometimes they'll say, can I go with you in the police car and just keep it, low key, and we will do that as well. Other times it's somebody who is really in a crisis and they're lashing out, whether verbally or physically, and if they aren't in agreement to go voluntarily, we have authority under the Involuntary Psychiatric Treatment Act in Nova Scotia to actually detain that person with the least amount of force possible, ideally, and cuff them if needed and search them. They're detained, they're advised of their rights, but we're not taking them to jail, we're taking them to see a medical or emotional health person. One of our most significant risks and violence against officers occurs during that type of situation. And oftentimes this call, it's a mental health call, but it also involves a certain level of criminality. There's been an assault, or there's been damage to property, or threats, or a weapon present. And then our authorities would be superseded under the IPTA, the Involuntary Psychiatric Treatment Act, in criminal code, which is federal law, would kick in where we would arrest the person for whatever criminal act they've committed. And that looks different. But I can tell you from my observations, and I'm still, despite being in the commander's chair, everywhere I've worked, I still go on the road with members, and I know the members here. Often they're difficult situations, but we're trained to nobody wants things to result to use of force. Like, we've got an increase in officers being injured physically, being assaulted, being spit at, threatened constantly. We don't want that. So to answer your question, despite what formal training I could list for you, we just know from having done it, some of us for a long time, it's all about the communications, the talking, the understanding, trying to rationalize with somebody who's in a crisis. And it's difficult, but I think for the most part, we do as best we can there. I do see more training coming, and there's a lot happening, I'm going to say, not to speak at a turn, but at the provincial level with our healthcare. Because there are some people who would argue the police shouldn't be going to these things, or if we'd have to go if there's a presence of threats of violence or violence, but to have somebody with us, and I believe in Halifax, our units as well as Halifax Regional have begun to engage taking a mental health professional with them. And that can look different depending on the situation too. Sometimes they can't because it's too violent, but I see improvements coming, but it has to be a partnership with, even folks at the local level with supports they could provide, with what we will continue to do with, say, healthcare, Nova Scotia mental health and addictions, et cetera. So it is a big piece of what we do, but I think it's going to get better. I'm optimistic. In the meantime, we go to every call and we try to mitigate it, and without any need for violence or use of force from our side, but it doesn't always work out that way, unfortunately. But I hope that answers some of your question.
It does.
Okay, sir.
I see no more microphones on. Well, thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate you coming in and presenting the council, and actually, it's a good thing that you're here, because I do believe the deputy warden might have been speeding to get here on time.
I'm not United States, but I plead the fifth.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate the time to speak, and look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you.
Where would it be without a little bit of humor, huh? All right, item 7.2, stone lifting, Keith Surratt. Keith, I'm assuming all you have to do is sit down, the microphone's on, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you.
It's on.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I would like to speak about stone lifting. As you can see above, the stones of strength. I have a presentation to make on creating a tourism experience at the Cape Foreshoe Lighthouse. My name is Keith Surratt. I was born and raised in the south end of Yarmouth. Right here? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. I was born and raised in the south end of Yarmouth. I now live in Hebron, just up the road. I am the owner and operator of Jones Gym on Main Street, and I have been open for 12 years now. I competed at the World's Strongest Man competition on 4 different occasions in the 198-pound weight class. And during those competitions, I would lift stones. So it was a natural progression to lift historical stones in Iceland, Sweden, and Scotland 2 times now. So I would like to create a tourism experience at the lighthouse that I think would be a tourism draw. I think it builds on the local fishing community and the connection to Leif Erikson and the runic stone. I think this would all fit very nicely within the Cape for Shoe master plan. It would take very little space, and it would be very inexpensive to set up. So what exactly is historical stone lifting? So our ancestors lifted stones because that's all they had access to. They, of course, didn't have access to a gym like we do. So they used to lift stones for many, many different reasons. To prove themselves worthy of being a warrior for their particular clan, as a job interview, if you can lift the stone, you get the job, or to simply just prove who was the strongest person. There are lifting stones with documented history throughout the entire world, and just recently rediscovered historic stones in Canada, in Nunavut. The purpose of it all is to just honor the tradition and honor our ancestors. So it's not lost on me that these are stones. It's not about the stones. It's about the story, the tradition, and especially the people. That's what give them meaning. Sorry. So I'd like to talk specifically as an example about the Drittvik stones. They are stones in Iceland, a set of 4 stones. As you can see in the photograph, there are some tourists lifting the stones, enjoying the challenge. So these particular stones were used in Iceland as a job interview. They varied in weight from very light, 50 pounds, to very heavy, 339 pounds. And any fisherman who could lift the heaviest stone would be literally paid more because they were physically capable of doing their job in such a demanding industry at that time. They would also receive more respect within the fishing community. And the reason that they chose stones, of course, again, is because they had access to stones, but also because the motion of lifting a stone is extremely similar to rowing a boat. So it would be very, very useful on a boat. So I'll give you just a quick demonstration. So the way that a person lifts a stone is they get into a position like this, and we actually call this motion rowing the stone onto our lap. So if you would imagine that I'm sitting down, it's very similar to rowing a boat. Okay? So it was an absolutely perfect way to test who would be a strong rower. And so they would then put those strong rowers in the middle of the ship near the mast where it was the most difficult to row. So they had proven themselves. They would also put them there to be near the chieftain or their king to offer more protection. So in their day, being able to lift a heavy stone could change the destiny of that person who could lift it and their family. Here's just a slide of the weights. So the lightest being 50 pounds, 119 pounds, 220, and then 339. So those stones, I believe, have a connection to, or at least potentially a connection to Yarmouth. So we have the Leif Erikson Trail at the lighthouse, and I think it's very likely that Leif Erikson was a stone lifter himself. He was described as a big, strong man of striking appearance, and the Icelandic culture at that time was steeped in the tradition of using stones to prove one's strength. So the timeline fits, and I think it's highly likely that he lifted stones himself. simply because it would be a simple way for him to prove and earn the respect of his crew. So if he could lift the same stones that his crew had to get their job in the first place, I think he would have proven himself worthy of leadership. And at that time, the Icelandic people wrote sagas. They wrote them on calf skins, and the fact that they wrote about stone lifting shows the importance of stone lifting to their culture at that particular time. I think it's also possible that the Icelandic tradition of stone lifting was brought to Nova Scotia by Leif Erikson himself, because we know for sure that the tradition was brought to Nova Scotia from Scotland many, many years later. So I think it's also possible that the runic stone is a lifting stone, since we haven't been able to figure out what it is. So on the right, you can see the Baibon stone, which is also a carved stone with similar engravings. And we know that that translates to Baibon lifted this stone above his head with one hand. And that goes all the way back to the 6th century. So I, of course, have no idea if the runic stone was a lifting stone, but it's certainly a possibility. So now we have what we call modern stones. So to make a comparison, the recently rediscovered Nunavut stones are historic because we know that they were lifted in at least going back to the 1500s. There's no actual timeline on what makes stones historic, but we just call them that for lack of a better term. As far as modern stones go, a great example is the Edmonton Stones of Strength. So they were started by Dave and Dale Nisbet, who Dave is pictured on the left there. That's in Scotland. He's lifting the Fiona stone, which has a history of at least 700 years. So they started the Edmonton Stones of Strength to basically honor the tradition of historic stone lifting in Edmonton at a municipal park. And so I think that that's a great proof of concept. We already know that it works because they are doing it. They've recently been in the news. They've been on CBC, and they also had a full-page article in the Globe and Mail approximately 1 month ago. There's also, just to go off of this for a second, there's also some rediscovered historic stones in Ireland that were recently featured in GQ magazine as well. So Dave and Dale started a podcast about stone lifting, and I have been a guest on that podcast. And there's also a stone lifting magazine, and I wrote an article for that magazine. It's going to be in the upcoming issue. So stone lifting is thriving in Canada and throughout the world. There's no doubt about that. It's a great time to be a stone lifter. So just to give you a little more detail on what I am proposing, I think that it would be great to create a set of 4 lifting stones at the Cape Verschowe Lighthouse that ties everything together, our connection to the sea, the Viking fishermen, Leif Erikson, and the runic stone. I think it should be dedicated to and named after our local fishermen. I think that we should use a range of weights to accommodate everybody, similar to the Drittvik stones. And I think that all of this can be done for the simple cost of a sign. I am willing to work with the municipal staff to create this experience from start to finish. If there's anything that I can do to help, I would be happy to do so, including designing a sign, updating the website or social media that needs to be updated with the relevant information. And I also think that it would be great to create some type of method to celebrate the successful lifts. So it could be a certificate program that somebody is awarded to with a successful lift. It could be a guest book that the person signs to document their lift and their experience. It could be promoting their lifting video on your website. It could be many, many things. Oh, I forgot to go to the next slide. I apologize. So, in closing, again, historic stones, they are just simply stones. That's all they are. It's It's the story, tradition, and especially the people that give them meaning. And I think that this is an opportunity to create a set of modern lifting stones that could grow old with the lighthouse and eventually become historic stones for generations of people to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. Questions of council? Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thanks for the presentation. For your lifting stones, I know one of the first slides you had, they were kind of like rounded stones. So would you go looking for the beach rock stone on the beach?
I think that it would be, I think it would be best to purposely use stones from the lighthouse, so whatever could be found there.
Okay.
So you can do it any way that you would like. I think that a stone that has no good grip is much more difficult to grip.
Yeah. It would be.
Yeah, they specifically use those stones in Sweden on farms as, they call them farmhand stones. So
Okay.
because a farmer needs to have strong hands, they purposely use stones that are very round, that don't have a good grip. And they would typically, each farm would have at least a stone. And if you wanted a job on that farm to prove that you were strong enough to be able to do the work that you would need to be able to do on that
Yeah.
farm, you would have to lift that stone or you wouldn't get the job. Sometimes they would also have a second stone, and if you could lift the heavier of the two, you would even get more pay.
Right.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah, so it doesn't actually, it doesn't matter. It would be whatever stones we would choose.
Yeah.
And you want, depending on the stone, you want people to be able to lift them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you don't want to have a stone there that weighs so much that nobody can ever lift it. But you also don't want everybody to be able to lift the heaviest. It needs to be a challenge. And we have, I'm sure, just because of our fishing community, I think that many of the fishermen would be very, very strong and capable of lifting certainly the second heaviest stone, if we were to use the same weights, let's say, as the Drittvik stones in my example. And there would perhaps be some people that would be able to lift the heaviest as well.
Now, I know down at on the Leif Erikson Trail, there'd be lots of samples of
Yes.
different weighting stones.
Yes, yes, absolutely, thousands of stones.
So, yeah. No, I think it'd be quite a thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Keith. That was fascinating. It looks just amazing.
Thank you.
So a couple of questions for you. So the stones are set out, and is this always a specific event, or people just go and lift the stones whenever they're there?
They are just there.
They're just there?
They're just there.
And so who would monitor, and how does liability work for something like that?
So everywhere that I've been, there's only ever been one stone that was, one set of stones that were under lock and key. And for a very specific and good reason, I think. They're on the property of a cafe. And so they want to organize and have judges there to judge the lift. But that's only those two stones. Every other stone that I've ever been to, I've lifted 50 historic stones, so I've been to a lot of different sites. The stones are just simply there. To answer your question about liability, I think that the act of lifting a stone is by nature voluntary. Nobody's going to make you lift the stones. I think that what would have to happen is you'd have to have the weights on a sign, being clearly stated how heavy they are and to lift within your ability. Similar to an already existing sign that's on the Leif Erikson Trail to basically use the stones at your own risk. And also, I think a good example would be the Mariner Center. So if you play hockey, as an example, you don't sign a release of liability to play hockey, it's my understanding. But I don't think that you're being sued from a whole lot of people that are getting hurt playing hockey. I think that everybody understands that if you do that thing, there is a risk. So I simply don't think it would be a problem.
Okay, thank you. And so would there be, could you organize events around
Oh,
that as
absolutely,
well?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, you absolutely could. I think that it would definitely be a good idea to christen the stones and have a day to celebrate them and to start things off and to create a buzz. And you could absolutely do that. It could be an annual event. The Edmonton Stones of Strength, I can go back in the slide, there's a photograph on the right. They have what's called a gathering, and it's in honor of the Dinnie Stones, which are in Scotland, and they get together once a year and they lift stones together. So yeah, you could absolutely do it.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Keith, thank you for the presentation. Fantastic idea.
Thank you.
It does, to your point, it does suit the area, and
Yes.
there is a connection, and I think there'd be a lot of, I mean, if you're talking competitions, I'm sure, some of the outlying communities would maybe like to compete with Yarmouth and all that type of thing. I'm sure there's like an infinite amount of things you could do around that. So
I agree.
I'm pretty pumped, so to speak, with
Good.
about this. So
You can try them yourself.
I'll start with a very small one, but yeah, I'll try the 50, and we'll work up from there. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. But no, thank you for coming in, and I think certainly that we can have staff work with you to get this going. It seems like it suits perfectly. So
Good, thank you. Yeah, I
absolutely.
agree. There's actually a lot of different connections, and they all intertwine nicely together.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Keith. I think it's a fantastic idea. Council does not make any decisions during presentations, but I'm sure they'll be coming up at a future meeting. I like the idea that it's going to highlight an area of the municipality that council's focused a lot of attention on, in the name of the Leif Erikson Trail and the improvements out there. The more that we can do out there to make that a better visiting place for people and actually try their feats of strength. Actually, I did. When I was in traveling, I did try to lift a round stone, and it was a lot heavier than 50 pounds, but you were absolutely correct. When the stone is smooth,
Yes,
it's very hard to grip.
yes, absolutely. And
It's
that's why they use those stones as testing stones. Yes,
Yeah, and because a round stone is, even a 50-pound or even a 30-pound is very hard.
I
to put
agree.
your hands on and lift. But if they've got edges, it's a little bit easier.
yes.
Councillor Hill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I've been hesitant on asking questions because I know Keith and I've followed him from the beginning. And just out of curiosity, what's the heaviest stone that you've lifted?
The heaviest stone is this one right here. I'll show you. So there's all kinds of different challenges. So this is the Husafell stone, and it's in Husafell, Iceland. That's the name of the area. And all the stones that you see in the background are a sheep's pen. And the stone that I'm lifting weighs 410 pounds. And the goal of that particular stone is it used to be used as the pen to keep the sheeps in. And because of its very unique shape, it could be leaned against the outside of the sheep pen, and it could be rolled in and out of the way. So whenever they wanted to open the gate and let the sheep in or out, they could do so easily. And the goal of that particular stone is to pick it up and carry it one lap around the entire pen without dropping it. And that's definitely the heaviest stone that I've ever lifted.
And just one follow-up question. Can you go one slide ahead, please? Just for the audience, can you tell me who the guy in the picture is and his role in this whole thing?
Yeah, so that is Thor Bjornsson. He is, most people would know him from as the Mountain in the Game of Thrones, but he's also the world's strongest man, and I in that photograph weigh about 200 pounds, and he weighed about 455 is what he told me. He's 6'9". So he's a real life Icelandic giant. I think that it would be, if we could get these stones here, maybe we could invite him to come lift them himself. So that was in his gym the day before the Husafell stone that I just spoke about in the previous slide. And at the time, he held the world record for the greatest distance carried with that stone.
Thank you very much. One more.
In my younger years as a fisherman, we used to compete by lifting a 200-pound barrel of salt bait from across the boat to another boat. So that when I was young and foolish.
Well, so I'm not surprised because I think that the fishing community is very competitive amongst themselves. And something like that, so again, it's not always the weight. So stones are very, very awkward to lift typically. They're not made to be lifted. They're not balanced like a barbell is at a gym. And so something like that can weigh far, far less than something on a barbell and still be much more difficult to lift, especially if you're moving with it. That is a completely different thing as well. So yeah, I'm not surprised. It seems to be, I'm 45 years old and feel like I'm getting older all the time, and my days are limited, I think, with these stones, but it's something that is absolutely in us. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Next presentation, item 7.3, Capital Projects and Asset Management Coordinator. We have with us today Danny Jackson, member of our staff, head of the Asset Management team. So could I get you to turn on your microphone? There you go, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, Madam CAO, Council and guests, before I start, please excuse my current appearance as I'm currently on stage in production at the Arc this week, so I've got a little bit of extra growth. Good afternoon. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide the Municipal Council with a comprehensive understanding of our current capital projects and what stages they are at. By outlining these stages, we aim to enhance transparency, accountability, and effective project management. Capital project stages. There's preliminary 6 stages, starting with planning and feasibility studying, design and development, procurement and contracting, construction or implementation, monitoring and evaluation, and then amalgamation into the asset management. Overview of the capital projects. The first one is the Nova West Regional Business Park expansion. The current stage is at 90% design submission. We enlisted engineers EXP for the preliminary design of our 12-acre project. The 90% design submissions revealed the potential for 17 service lots, spanning from 4,200 metres squared to 12,500 square metres. Additionally, we collaborated with the Southwest Biosphere Reserve Association to conduct a wetland watercourse delineation. However, the report identified some conflicts, prompting adjustments to accommodate the wetlands and watercourse in their design. Furthermore, during the process, an archaeological site of First Nations significance was discovered, and an on-site excavation was conducted by Davis Archaeological. However, it yielded no significant findings. Upon the completion of the design, we will return to Council for a decision. The next capital project is the Dayton Sidewalk Extension stage, 50% design submission. We engaged EXP to handle the preliminary design for extending the Hebron-Dayton sidewalk southward through Dayton to Maple Hill Lane. However, several contentious areas have emerged concerning stormwater management, right-of-ways, property lines, and adherence to Nova Scotia Department of Public Works' new sidewalk guidelines. We met with Nova Scotia Department of Public Works on April the 30th and are awaiting some decisions. Once these conditions are adequately addressed, we will bring the project back to Council for a decision. Next capital project is the accessibility renovations to the administration building and the Rotary Centre. Stage, 100% schematic design completed, 30% design development. We contracted the Venton Group to conduct preliminary designs for accessibility upgrades necessitated by non-compliance highlighted in the Class D audit. These upgrades aim to ensure compliance with the National Building Code, NBC, and the Nova Scotia Building Code Regulations, NSBCR, as referenced in the Nova Scotia Built Environment Standards. Once the designs have been finalised and agreed upon, we will bring the project back to Council for approval to proceed with tendering. The next capital project is the Hebron Data Inflow and Infiltration Wastewater section. Stage, we had a site visit of the week of May the 6th for scope of work and data collection. Public Works Director Derek Sutherland and I engaged Eastland Trenchless from New Brunswick, and this company specialises in municipal wastewater infiltration and inflow, I&I, procedures across Nova Scotia. After several discussions and strategic analysis sessions, it is recommended that Eastern Trenches conduct a site visit to capture 3D imagery of the affected manholes and conduct jetting, cleaning and flushing, camera inspection of the concrete wastewater pipe section on the Greenville Road. This will help determine the most suitable methods for repairing the hairline cracking and fractures in the future. Once this assessment is completed, staff will move forward with remediation based on the approved capital budget. The next capital project was the Public Works Leisure Services Driveway located at the Hebron Recreation Centre. Stage, the tender has now closed. We contracted EXP to design upgrades for the deteriorating gravel road, focusing on addressing stormwater and runoff issues. The design has been completed and the contract was posted for tender on the Nova Scotia Procurement website. As I stated earlier, the tender has now closed. After review, there will be a request for a decision. The next capital project is the Mariners Expansion Project. Stage, completed 99% of the design stage. This project has reached the 99% design stage. A presentation will be made to Council in the near future. Tusket School, PEB, Peb School, athletic track. Stage, final stages of completion. Before installing the synthetic surface, certain deficiencies in the asphalt work need to be addressed first. This will be postponed until the weather improves and dries up. Our revised timeline aims to have the track usable by early June. Overall of asset management, the offices of my Office of Asset Management has been updating and implementing some asset management principles and practices into the municipality's infrastructure of assets, such as roads, buildings and utilities, to ensure their long-term sustainability and optimal performance. This data serves as a foundation for informed decision-making regarding maintenance, repair, replacement priorities. These asset management plans will align with the municipality's overall strategic objectives and consider factors as risk management, lifestyle costing, level of service, and sustainability. Implementation also involves fostering a culture of collaboration and knowledge sharing among departments responsible for asset management, as well as engaging with stakeholders in the community to ensure transparency and accountability in decision-making processes. Continuous monitoring, evaluation and improvement of asset management practices are essential to adapt to changing needs and optimise resource allocation over time. Asset management reports will accompany a mid-term capital year project review in the fall of 2024. Overall of the budget, capital projects and asset management budgets are on track. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danny. Question to council? Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Danny. very thorough report, and just goes to show you that the municipality of Yarmouth is moving forward and trying to improve our residents of the municipality of Yarmouth. You know, so that listed a number of projects that we're working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Danny, for this report. Not necessarily a question, but when I looked at the report on the Nova West Business, Regional Business Park, interesting that the archaeological site for First Nations significance was found, and I'm glad to see that we've followed all the proper procedures and protocols to ensure that there was nothing, that if there was something there, we would continue, but, you know, seeing here that yielding no significant findings, which is good, but really happy to see that would appear that we followed what we need to do in order to maintain that relationship.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, through to Sherry Hurlbert, as we move forward with these kind of findings, you know, they're becoming more significant on sidewalks and all types of development moving forward.
So I guess a follow-up question would be, in everything that we do, we are incorporating that component into sidewalks?
It is becoming industry standard.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Appreciate it, thank you.
Danny, in regards to the I&I infiltration and inflow, that's been a big problem in some of our sewer systems that we own. Is there any estimation of how much that you guys estimate that is flowing in there? Is it like 20% of what you expect, or 20% more than you expect, or?
Mr. Chair, it's very hard to put a percentage on it per se. The inflow and infiltration happens during heavy precipitation events, and that's how we know that, you know, I&I is happening through the lift station when the volume of water comes quick and impedes the lift station. What I can tell you is from the preliminary findings from the report that I received this week, there's a number of factors that are contributing to that. There's some numerous factors and joint separations on that line, so I'm just waiting for the final report from the contractors to address that situation.
And when you talk about joint separation, that's where the pipes are joined together, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Any other questions of council? Staff? Seeing none, thank you very much, Danny. Appreciate your report, and thank you for coming today. And you look very nice.
I don't think he's going far. He's got a few things on your agenda.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 8, correspondence for action. We have in front of us an invitation from the Yarmouth Area Cadets Annual Review. That's actually something that I attend every year. A lot of you don't know, I was a former Sea Cadet back in my younger days, back when I was a teenager, and I also became a commissioned officer for a few years, I guess setting the foundation for being in council. So in there is just a request for decision in regards to, I've already notified our recording clerk that I will be attending, so if any one of you decide that you're going to attend, the deadline is tomorrow. So if you're going to go, please let Jenny know, and she'll send an email off stating who's going to be attending, but I have already committed to attending that. Item 8.1.2, road concerns, Highway 304.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So
No, your microphone is not on.
Yep, it is.
Is it?
Yep.
All right, it is.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. When this piece of correspondence came in, I recommended to you that it be in correspondence for action because Highway 304 is definitely a heavily traveled highway and definitely one of those roads is a legacy issue. I think if we were building community today, the route out to Cape Firshu would look different than it does now. But I recommend that council respond to the resident indicating that council has submitted a letter of support to the province of Nova Scotia on an application they are making to do some significant work along Highway 304 around the Disaster Mitigation Fund. So that is a piece that council has done to be part of that solution, and I just wanted to recommend to council that we respond to the resident in that way.
Moved by Councillor Nick Hilton to respond to the resident, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. My apologies, I did not turn on the microphone. So that motion was moved by Councillor Nick Hilton and seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? This is to recommend to regular council. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Councillor Cushing, I'm sorry I missed you.
That's all right. I've been missed before. Thank you, Mr. Warden. Highway 304 has definitely been a problem, as our CAO has mentioned. And for the public to understand, Highway 304 is what they call a blue route, which is the province's responsibility to make sure the shoulders are wide enough to have cycling, walking, or running without being bothered by traffic. And most everybody has been down to the lighthouse, to the Cape for Shoe, and there's many areas that certainly need improvement. So I think it's certainly up to council to forward a letter, as our CEO has recommended, in response to Mr. Cleveland. And you know, that road, I find one of the most serious parts of the road is from the Johns Cove Beach right to the lighthouse. Very narrow, and with the tourist season coming up, and I've mentioned this several times before, that along that area, if somebody's not really paying attention, there could be an accident. There's people walking along that area that really could be seriously hurt. And also along that same route, we have the Johns Cove Beach, and it has been suggested to us before that can we find some way of having a life ring posted at the Johns Cove Beach because of the swimming area and the possibility of anybody on a tube or something that could be blown out into the harbor and across the harbor. So we had a serious incident a few years back, which was, you know, a local resident took part and saved the lives of two people. So thank you, CEO, for going to bring that to the letter to the government, and also to respond to Mr. Cleveland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. All right, any more discussion on that? Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just a question through you to staff. You know, building on Lauren's comments about having a life ring at Johns Cove, is that, you know, it's a provincial beach, how do we go about doing something like that? Because you're right, there should be some life-saving equipment there if needed. It just has to be posted on, but whose responsibility and how do we go about doing that?
So, Mr. Chair, it's actually not a provincial park or beach, and that's part of the challenge. It's just a general open space, and in fact, the PID between Lobster Pound Road and the beach is registered with the land registry as owner unknown. It's not even in the name of the Crown. So it's a bit problematic, and what we have done in the past is had some conversations with the province around some things that could be done to improve the situation out there. And in fact, I think in our last meeting, they were made aware of the rescue that happened in the harbor at that time. So yeah, we've notified the province and done what we can there. It's not municipally owned land. There's no municipal programs delivered there. And certainly the municipality doesn't have, you know, any resources to aid in a water rescue.
Keep that in mind. Keep thinking about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more discussion on the road concern? Hearing none or seeing none? Item 8.1.3, Integrated Youth Services Letter of Support. Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And since we had a presentation from Denise Vacon in the group exploring what we can do for youth in Yarmouth County, I've been kind of following along with them the steps and the process from the report. And one of the things that was one of the things being provided to Western Zone is 2 integrated youth sites, you know, for the most part, I think there's 6 or 8 throughout the province. 7 of them have been already authorized, and there's 1 outstanding availability in Western Zone, and I have a strong feeling that it's being held for the idea that it might be, should be or could be located here in Yarmouth. So we have a request from them to write a letter of support for the initiative as a supporter. The information is there in the attachment, and I'd make a motion that we write that letter of support to help them bring an integrated youth services site here to Yarmouth.
So you're making a recommendation to regulate council?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Any discussion on that? And there I go again, turning off my mic. Any discussion on that? Councillor Patty Durkee? Nope. Councillor? You are now.
Okay. Thank you, Nick, for bringing this forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had heard that we were late in jumping on the bandwagon for integrated youth services site, but thrilled that there's still a possibility. So I will definitely be supporting this motion. I think anything we can do to help our youth today is definitely warranted.
Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. I don't know what's going on today. I have a heck of a time seeing people's lights on their microphones, if they're flashing or not. Must be from the sunshine that we're not used to. Okay, item number 8.2 for information. We have 5 pieces of letter. The Yarmouth Earth Day weekend celebration, Port Maitland Volunteer Fire Department annual report, letter to Minister Lohr, re-service exchange, the Wren Cellular Service survey findings, very interesting, and 8.2.5, a thank you from the Western County Regional Library. No discussion on any of those items for information. Item number 9, old business, 9.1, Park Drive. Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
Right. It's my understanding over the last little bit that staff has, I guess, verified that most of the Park Drive section that was problematic, the general, it's in a good state of, I guess the underlying roadway's been built well, so I'm pleased to hear that. So Park Drive is developing more and more all the time, and more traffic, and more dust, and so. But in any event, it's been graded, and it's in a pretty good shape for a gravel road at this point. So it is nice to be seeing development in the municipality, and those are important things certainly to see. So I just maybe through you, Mr. Chair, ask our CEO for an update on Park Drive and what we'll do sort of moving forward to improve and make sure the condition of the roads where it should be.
Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So last year, we increased the level of service on repairs and maintenance by adding an additional grading. And we also provisioned for an additional application of hydrochloride. I think that's what it's called, chloride road, in case it was needed. We only did it once last year, but we did provision in the budget to do it twice. This year, in addition to provisioning for the 2 rounds of grading and one round and a provisional second round of chloride. There's also going to be a gravel program in certain sections of the road to address some areas where we get potholing. We had held off adding the gravel program until we received the engineering report and the stress testing on those sections of the road to verify if the road had been constructed properly. There was some thought that there could be stormwater runoff that was causing some of the problems, but we've ruled that out. So we're moving forward on a repairs and maintenance program that maintains a level of service and a level of repair that council and the community are looking for. And then the other piece, Mr. Jackson referred to it a little bit in his presentation, the asset management program is coming to life. And so every year, council's going to have access to more information and more data to help inform its investments on the capital side and the operating side.
I also want to mention one thing. We're talking about a dirt road, Park Drive. Some people may or may not realize that's a dirt road owned by the municipality of Yarmouth. I do know that many people own dirt roads or live on dirt roads all across the municipality district of Yarmouth. Municipality does not own them. I just wish that the province would take good care of their roads as we try to. It's a big expense. And also this year, I do know that the dust is getting up, as the CEO mentioned about chloriding our road. I do have a question for the CEO in regards to chloride. Are we limited to putting that down when the Department of Transportation does their own provincial roads for chloriding?
So I'm not sure what the sequencing looks like, but we do contract with the province for the application of chloride on the road. There aren't a lot of vendors who can provide that service, so we have a great relationship with the local public works depot. Last year, chloride was late across the entire province, and that was in the supply chain for actually getting the chloride. So it wasn't to do with deploying human resources or deploying equipment. It was actually receiving the chloride into the province and being able to deploy it on the roads.
Yes, absolutely. And more chloride is needed when we have a dry period. And unfortunately, again, we are in another dry period. Hopefully, we get some rain soon. And it'll also alleviate some of the dust concerns that we're having. So thank you very much, Madam CEO, for your answer. Moving on, item 9.2, in addition, my apologies, Councillor Lauren Cushing, you did send me that email to have this added, and I missed it. So thank you very much. 9.2, Marine Protected Area. Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I had brought this up a number of years ago about the MPA, Marine Protection Area. And what the federal government is trying to do through DFO is to regulate at least 30% of our oceans around Nova Scotia as a protection area where no activity could be done, especially in the fish dragon sector. I do know that DFO made a presentation to the municipality of Argyle, and I would request that we have a similar presentation done for the municipality of Yarmouth concerning this marine protection area, for the main reason we do have a strong fishing industry in our municipality, and I think it's important for us to let the public know that some of the stuff is being considered. So I won't go into much more detail about it, but I think if we can line up a presentation from DFO on marine protection area, it would be great. Thank you.
So I would prefer that you make that a recommendation to regular council. And from what I heard, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is to request staff to make requests to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to make council a presentation in regards to marine protected areas.
Correct.
So are you moving that?
Yes.
Motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Any discussion on the motion on the floor? I think that's a wonderful idea. It's something that's been brought up, and I can't remember how long ago it was, but I do remember when it was brought up, the outcry and concern and lack of information that was brought forward to the public, and especially an industry that we rely on so much, the fishing industry. So yeah, absolutely, I'm in full support of trying to get any and all information we can. Madam CEO, you had something to add?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm just looking for some direction from council. So when the marine protected areas were in the media a couple of years ago, the municipal planner did a presentation to the Planning Advisory Committee to help understand the context of the marine protected areas and the potential impacts. Is there an appetite from council to receive a presentation from the planner as well as DFO?
What is council's wishes? I don't see no objection.
The lens that gets applied is, around what are the potential impacts on-land planning and development if the marine protected areas are implemented. So that just adds another layer of information for council.
Absolutely. Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, council. Item number 10, new business. Item 10.1, application under policy R-002-03. Madam CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your package from the Director of Finance is a recommendation to reduce taxes due to loss of fire in the amount of $197.57 on assessment account number 1289926.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
I'll make a motion that we move to regular council to approve the reduction in taxes due to the house fire
Motion on the...
with that PID number.
Okay, Councillor Patty Durkee made a motion. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.2, July and August meeting dates. You have in there, in your package, a request for decision.
No, nothing in the package, Mr. Chair, just me live and in person.
Just you live and in person. Well, what am I looking at? I see. Request for decision, I've already moved ahead on CIP adjustments. Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So historically, council have combined meetings in July and August, Committee of the Whole and council together in order to be more available for community events. So in July, your Committee of the Whole would normally be on the second Thursday, the 11th, and your council on the fourth Wednesday, the 24th. And then in August, the calendar is a little bit different. Your second Thursday is the 8th, but your fourth Wednesday is not till the 25th. And I'm just seeking direction from council on how you'd like to schedule those months. What we've done in the past is gone in the middle.
That's what I was just going to say. If I remember correctly, last year and the year before we went, we had the regular council meetings and committee, or sorry, the Committee of the Whole and the regular council meetings on the third, I can't remember if it was Wednesday or Thursday, but
Wednesday.
yeah. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
I'll make a motion that we hold a joint Committee of the Whole and council meeting for Wednesday, July 17th at 6 p.m. and August the 14th at 6 p.m.
Okay, motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Councillor Hurlbert, you still have the floor? Nope. Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thanks, and I appreciate the motion that Sherry made, because I was a little concerned it was going to be a random day at 2:30, and there's no way anyone that works can get a vacation at this late of hour. So, good job.
All right, is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? This is to move the regular council. Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.3, request for decision. NWRBP CIP adjustments. Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just going to very briefly discuss the context of this file, and then Mr. Jackson's going to present the request for decision.
Before you go ahead, Madam CEO, I gave an acronym, which I hate acronyms. They're Nova West Regional Business Park.
Right.
I should have said that rather than giving everyone an acronym.
So for the last couple of years, because save one or two lots, all of the developed lots in the business park are sold, council wanted to take a look at what it would involve to open up Phase 2 of the business park. And so staff have been working really for about a year to kind of do that analysis, and council have provisioned some work in the capital investment plan, and there's new information that Mr. Jackson is going to present to you.
Danny, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, Madam CEO, Council and guests. So the background, initially the Nova West Regional Business Park was allocated $3 million for the next 3 fiscal years, with $1.5 million from the capital reserves and $1.5 million from gas tax funds in the 2024-25 CIP. This allocation allowed the Nova West Regional Business Park to be designed for our 12-acre development project. The 90% design submissions revealed the potential for 17 service lots, ranging from 4,200 square metres to 12,500 square metres, totaling 98 square metres altogether. Furthermore, we partnered with the Southwest Biosphere Reserve Association for a wetland watercourse delineation study, as I mentioned previously. The report highlights conflicts that required adjustment. As a result, the new Nova West Regional Business Park cul-de-sac design in the draft stage has been revised to reduce development and accommodate the wetlands and the watercourses. This reduction amounts to 7 lots from the 17 lots, and this totaling 41,000 square metres, significantly shrinking the development footprint cost to $2.2 million. The status, the new draft cul-de-sac design proposed by the engineers is to accommodate the wetlands and watercourse in the design and has reduced the financial implication to $2.2 million with a total of 7 lots. As stated, the recommendation is, given the new information around the development of the Phase 2 in the Nova West Regional Business Park, it is recommended Council amend the municipality's capital investment plan, reducing the total investment of Phase 2 of the Nova West Regional Business Plan to up to $2.5 million, and proceeding to tender-ready design of the reduced scope of work, creating roads, water and wastewater services and approximately 7 lots.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Danny, for the nice detailed information here. Question. So this section has been reduced from 17 lots to 7, am I correct? And the 2.2 million, is this for the whole project? Is this each year for the next 3 years?
Through Mr. Chair to Patty Durkee. Yes, that is correct. 17 lots has been reduced down to now 7 lots, and the total cost of the project is 2.2 million.
So it's not 2.2 million over 3 each year? Because originally it was 3 million over 3 years. Now it's just 2.2 million
Correct.
for 1 year.
That's right, instead of 6.6 million, right, which would be
Yes.
2.2 a year for 3 years, to
It's-
develop the 7 lots is estimated at about 2.2 million.
Okay, and so does that mean we cannot go beyond that scope in the project? Like I think there was more than one phase. Is that as far as we can go in that development, and then we're done?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Patty Durkee. As outlined in the previous scope of work, we had the more land to develop, but the watercourse and the wetland delineation literally intersected that plan straight through the middle. And the biodiversity of that land acts as a biofilter for Doctors Lake. So it was advised not to touch that parcel of land.
Okay, so in other words, in the end, if it's 2.2 million, we're looking at about $157,000 in order for each lot, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Yeah, thanks for all the due diligence, and again, it's always good to see, I like to see development, but it's got to be done respectfully for the environment. Obviously, we've got lots of properties on Doctors Lake and a lot of wildlife there as well that needs protecting, so I guess this is the best way forward. Having said that, it is important to have lots available in our business park. We all know that the business park's probably the preferred place for business, and again, this extra 7 lots, I think, will add to that, critical mass of businesses that you need in the park to maybe grow even more in the future. And again, we're a little bit constrained about around the type of land we have. It's has lots of watercourse and so forth, but as we move forward, we can deal with some of those issues in the future. It is very, very important to note that we do have only 5% of our assessment on the commercial side. 95% is residential, so that's one of the areas that we need to strengthen. So given that, I'll move that the council, the Municipality District of Yarmouth Council, amend the municipality's capital budget plan, reducing the total investment on Phase 2 of the Nova West Regional Business Park to up to $2.5 million, and proceed to tender ready design of the reduced scope of work, creating roads, water, and wastewater services, and the approximately 7 lots has been delineated in the presentation.
A motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Discussion? Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just so that the public doesn't think that we're just spending money to develop unused lots, our present industrial park, West Nova Regional Business Park, is, I think all the lots have been sold. Is that correct?
All but 2.
All but 2? So that's a very good progress in the development of that park. So these other 7 lots are certainly going to be interested to other businesses to come, since when they see that there's other businesses going on there. So the more businesses come in, the better, more taxes we'll receive. Commercial tax size, as Councillor Cunningham mentioned, which is a very positive growth for the municipality of Yarmouth. As for the wetland part, I wonder, is there something that we can look at in the future of doing some type of wetland park there for people to observe the different type of wildlife that's there and whatnot? So just something to think about. So thank you.
If I could take that question from
Okay.
Councillor Cushing. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do think it's important for council to understand, once this particular phase of work is done, there is a need to take a step back and look at all of the lands that the municipality owns in the Nova West Regional Business Park and understand some of the constraints. So we have power line distribution corridor going through there. We've got more than one watercourse wetland going through there. So once this bit is done, take a step back, take a look at things, and look at other types of projects that could generate wealth for the municipality and can coexist with the nature of the land that's in there.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just for the public, it wasn't the decision to make a $9 million investment in a business park wasn't made lightly. It was made by a lot of, well, myself, with the idea that we wouldn't proceed without really looking at where that money was going to come from, in the hopes that it wouldn't all come directly from us, that we'd be able to apply to other levels of government for investment. So with the recommendation that was made here today, you know, what is, through you to staff, what does tender ready mean? Does that mean shelf ready? Like, does it mean we're going out? Does that mean we're going out in looking for bidders on this project, or is it
No.
going to come back to council?
It will come back to council, and you're quite right, Councillor Hilton, through you, through the chair to you. That's exactly what it means, is we develop a project that is what they call shovel-ready, and then we'll start shopping that around to some funding streams and see who's interested in being part of this.
Okay, perfect. And I guess I'd be in agreement. And thank you to the staff for pulling this together. One other question is, do we know what the cost is to get it to that point? Like, what, is it just our staff time, or are we hiring someone to get it to tender ready?
Mr Chair, back through to Nick Hilton. We've currently engaged the engineers, EXP, that are currently doing the design stages. So once that design stage is finalised, then we can move forward from there.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Danny, for this presentation, and staff for the work you've done. I struggle with this. I struggled with the 17 lots at an exorbitant amount, and going into and reading this document, my option would have been to remove it from the development for the capital investment plan for the foreseeable future. Do we know how much we would sell one lot for?
Go ahead, Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's about more than just selling the one lot. When the FedEx building was built and the developer was working with the municipality, you know, there was a lot of discussion around kind of a chicken and egg thing. Does the municipality build the roads and install the services and develop the lots to a place where they're not raw greenfield, but they're not necessarily hard pan ready for a foundation? You know, what does the municipality do? And what we understand from the construction industry is because of expectations around time and speed, it is a situation where municipalities have to make investments up front to create land that is essentially ready to be built on. And it's about more than the selling price. It's about the future taxable assessment on that land to pay back that over time. When you can get 50% dollars to help install the services, it relieves some of the burden on the local ratepayers because it's an investment in the future. So ratepayers today are paying for that, and it's going to help generate assessment for future ratepayers, which is why we always seek other funding partners on those large projects.
Okay, I appreciate that. I still struggle with the day and age that we are in and the financial. Yeah, I'm probably going to vote against the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I hear what Councillor Herbert's saying, and for the longest time I would have been on that side, especially at $9 million. I think we're finally in a place where at 100 and, what did you say it was, 150? You know, you're getting more in the ballpark of where we can partner with someone to make that a reality. I had a question to the CAO, probably. Is there anything in, you know, is there anything in the contracts that said they have to put a building on those sites in within so many years? Because, you know, we see the sites in the current the business park, some of them, you know, full of shipping containers and other things. Is there a way that we could say that, you know, the expectation is that there's a building within 5 years?
Yes, there is. They're called take-back clauses, and municipal governments do use them from time to time when they're selling industrial lands for development. So that's a tool that's in the toolbox that, you know, if the municipality is negotiating with a proponent, we can work through what that looks like and get legal advice on how to position that.
Okay. I think that was kind of raised to me actually by a resident, and I can see the benefits of that in this case. We're you know, we sold land at a reasonable price with the idea that the municipality would benefit from that long term, but it only works if they actually do put up a building. So maybe that's something we could consider when we sell the additional lots.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand Councillor Hurlbert's perspective, because that's why I asked how much this would cost per lot, but I do appreciate the fact that we've gone from a 9 million project to a 2.2 million. That being said, through you, Mr. Chair, to our CAO Brooks, do we have any requests for property now, or have we had any that we couldn't accommodate?
So there's nobody in the queue waiting for land. What our economic development officer tells us is, in fact, most of the inquiries are from prospectors who are looking to sign a long-term lease in a building, somewhere around 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, that's not heavily built out or designed, that can easily have leasehold improvements made on it. And we don't have direction from council to be building buildings and becoming landlords. So in order to improve the ratio of residential to commercial assessment, this is a kind of a tactic that council is considering.
Thank you. No, I don't believe this is the time for us to be putting up buildings on speculation, considering the condition that the economy is at present. Thank you very much.
I do have one question for staff in regards to the up to $2.5 million. That is still going to be eligible under the gas tax funds, correct?
I think it's more than the Canada Community Building Fund program. I think that there are other streams that we can look at. And so getting permission to go to tender ready gives us enough level of detail to make those applications to those funding streams.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Vote of 4 to 2. Motion is carried. Would you like your names recorded? Please record both. All right, moving on. Item 10.4, request for decision, Recreation Road.
Mr. Chair, Madam CEO, Council and guests. So the file is the Hebron Recreation Centre Drainage Road, construction tender ID Hebron Rec Drainage, award recommendation. The background: in the approved 2024-2025 capital investment plan, the council directed the rehabilitation of the Hebron Recreation Road, located at the Hebron Recreation Centre. Total budget for this was $100,000 per year for the next 3 fiscal years, 2024, 25 and 26. There was consideration given to the possibility of completing the work in phases. However, costs per metre are significantly higher to take this approach. Consultants EXP was retained by Modi for engineering designs and tender preparation services. The tender for the scope of work was issued on March the 27th, 2024 and closed on April the 23rd, 2024 with 2 addendums. 4 contracting companies submitted their bids as follows: Devu Dirt Works Limited, $191,945 plus HST. Graham Construction Limited, $293,082 plus HST. Delmar Construction, $308,231.68 plus HST. And number 4 was Dexter Construction Company Limited, $382,740 plus HST. All companies have confirmed to be qualified and able to fulfill the tender requirements. Status: as per the review, 3 bids was compliant and 1 bid was disqualified. All the bids were over budgeted amount. The lowest bidder is approximately 50% over budget. Council will note an extreme variance between the low bid and the other 3 bids. The tender document provides a prescriptive list of materials and quantities. Bidders provide unit costing for each work. The recommendation: whereas the municipality of Yarmouth have provisioned a total of $300,000 over 3 years for road and drainage improvements to the Rotary Complex roadway, and whereas sufficient reserves are on hand to accelerate the product implementation for economic benefit. Therefore, it may be resolved that the Municipality District of Yarmouth accept the bid of Devou Dirtworks Limited in the amount of £191,945 plus HST for the Hebron Wreck Drainage tender, and further direct the CAO to negotiate a construction contract accordingly.
What is council's pleasure? Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
I'll move the recommendation is read into the record.
To move to regular
Just-
council,
is-
correct?
Yeah, to move to regular council, yeah.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Discussion? I'm having a heck of a time seeing lights today for some reason.
Must be my son or the...
No, I never said that, but I think I was thinking it.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm always concerned about what we get for a tender price as the lowest, and then you go look at the second one, and it's been there $100,000 more, and the third one has been there $200,000. I have a difficulty understanding why there's such a variance in prices there. And secondly, is it our, how could I say this properly? Is it our concern to know exactly what they're going to be doing there?
Definitely.
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 All right, so well, once things are down, we should be able to say, this is what they're going to do, this, and this?
Yep, so we will have on-site inspections.
Okay.
For sure, we'll have
Yeah.
our own staff and maybe even our engineer on site.
Yeah, but I just find it, $100,000 it's a pretty big number from the lowest to the next, so, anyway, thank you.
The way that I look at it too, Councillor Cushing, in regards to, because I've tried to bid out a few things, it depends on how busy some companies are, whether they have large projects on the go and would need to hire additional staff to complete. That's one way to look at it, and I did question the CAO about that. Why was there such a variance? And she brought it up to me, and I had concerns at the beginning about whether the firm was qualified, but through staff's diligence, they did find out that they are qualified to do the work. And as the CEO mentioned, we do have engineering and staff that make sure that this work is done properly. So I have no problem with the motion on the floor. Any more discussion on the motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Item 10.5, draft amendments to the procurement and purchasing policy P-088-14. We have with us our Deputy CEO, Darlene LeBlanc, probably going to walk us through this. You have the floor. Your microphone's already on. And
Okay.
Deputy Warden, if there's any questions that come up, please grab the mic. I'll be right back.
Thank you. So the first one is the procurement and purchasing policy. There's a couple of recommended amendments in there, so I'll go through them with you. If you want to go to page 2 in the definitions, 3.1.7, local business, we're just recommending a change in there to kind of fall in line with our neighboring municipal units who sort of use the same kind of wording. So as you'll see, we're looking at local being first in the municipality of Yarmouth, then Yarmouth County, and then the tri-counties. So that's one change there. 3.1.10, we're adding in, later in the document you'll see, we're adding in something about social enterprise. So we've just defined it there to go with, for the policy. And I'll just give you an example of a social enterprise. That would be the store next door, which is run by YACRO, and it hires people with disabilities. So that's just an example of what we mean by social enterprise. In 4.6, on page 3, we're suggesting taking out reference to those documents because One of them doesn't exist anymore. One of them, the name has changed. And it all, with 4.7, we're saying that we're complying with the Public Procurement Act, and so that's all covered in there. So it's just redundant. There's no real need to list out those documents. There's a couple of housekeeping amendments and changes in there as well. But if you go to page 9, 18.2, another place that we're recommending taking out reference to those documents. And we had them all as appendices, so we're suggesting removing those as appendices to the policy. It made it a very large, very long policy. And then if you can go to page 12, under local preference, we had it, right now the policy states that the municipality can apply a preference of 5% to a maximum of 5,000. And again, we're recommending a change there to kind of fall in line with some other units are doing near us. So namely Clare, Argyle, Town of Shelburne, Municipality of Shelburne, all do the 10% up to $10,000. So that's the recommendation that we're making. And then again, in 22.1, we're taking out reference to those documents. And then in part 23, 23.1.3, we already had something in there about sustainability considerations, and so we're just suggesting adding social enterprise to those considerations. And that's what we defined at the beginning. So those are the changes that we're recommending to this policy.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Darlene. I'll make the motion that we move to regular council the approval of the procurement and purchasing policy updates as presented.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Discussion? I will make one comment. I'm very happy to see that the changes in regards to the preference of a local business of 10% or $10,000. I think that falls in line with council's preference of hiring local as much as we can. So I'm glad to see that. And there's a lot of housekeeping stuff that's been going on in here, and there's a lot of stuff that was omitted and added and stuff like that. It was quite a read, and it is quite a large policy. So thank you very much for your work on that. But I'm glad to see. Well, I want to make note of it again, that 10% or $10,000 to hire local companies. I'm glad to see that. Any more discussion? Councillor Durkee, your microphone is still on. I didn't ask you, I didn't mention to you that you had the microphone on and you still had the floor, so my apologies for butting in if I did. Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 10.6, Municipal Streets and Sidewalks by Law, M-089-24.
So the changes we're recommending to this bylaw are to add in trails, to make it apply to our trails in our municipality as well. So we're suggesting the name change to Municipal Streets, Sidewalks, and Trails. We've gone through the document and added in trail in the various sections, like encroaching vegetation, damage, that sort of thing. Added sidewalks as well in certain places where it should have been originally. We defined trail on page 2, 2.13, and we took that definition from Nova Scotia Public Works. So that's what we went with there. And then if you go to page 7, under penalties, we're making a recommendation there to change it. We feel that the current penalties aren't really adequate, not a good incentive to follow the rules. If somebody does, for example, tear up the street, it would be cheaper to just pay the penalty of $1,000 than to actually fix the street. So we're recommending, we've looked at some other units, and several of them do either 500 to 10,000 or 100 to 10,000. So that's what we're recommending, having a range that allows us to charge various amounts for various penalties. So we looked at a couple of other places. So Town of Yarmouth, for example, does 500 to 10,000. Chester Municipality does 100 to 10,000. And then we got a few more. HRM, West Hanson, Windsor, all do up to 5,000, but all said they're under review currently because they feel that it's not enough.
Before I ask for any questions, in regards to this, Madam CAO, should council decide that they're moving this forward to regular council, doesn't this have to go to first reading?
Right, so this is a bylaw, not a policy, so if committee of the whole is interested in sending it to council, it would be for consideration as first reading of the bylaw.
Consideration. I always get those mixed up, whether they need first and second readings or if they don't. So if council does decide to send this forward to council, it's for council, to regular councils to recommend the first reading. Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we move the municipal streets and sidewalks and trails bylaw M-089-24 is presented to regular council for first reading.
Okay, a motion on the floor. To have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. Item 11, public comments. Jenny, do we have any requests for making any presentations? None? Before I call for a recess, I think it's important to note that we have with us today an NCC student that's doing his on-the-job training, and he's been doing all the video and support for today's meeting. His name's Wyatt Pittman, and I want to thank you very much for taking care of us. We'll find out if you did a good job or not when I decide I'm going to watch. So it's very important that we have apprentices and people doing on-the-job training throughout the municipality, and Wyatt is doing our IT support for us today. So thank you again on behalf of council and residents. We'll see if everything is up to snuff. If not, we'll blame Mike. All right, I'd entertain a motion to take a recess for 5 minutes before we go into camera. Moved by Councillor Nick Hilton, second by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.